Perception is reality, and a lot of people don't like HR. If you think back, the 1970s, the 1980s, the early 1990s, a lot of employee-centric laws and regulations came into play. So companies brought in people that could specialize in making sure that they weren't violating those new laws. In the beginning, HR was not around to make sure that the company supported and took care of their employees. And to be completely honest, our job is still to make sure that company policies and procedures are followed. However, our job is also to make sure that those policies and procedures are fair, that employee well-being is considered in the writing of those policies and procedures, that employees' rights are not violated, and that we're protecting the employee just as much as we're protecting the company. HR has the difficult task of balancing the two. There are a few things that HR can do to help with this perception. It starts with transparency. I'm honest with employees when they come to talk to me. I have a very short speech at the beginning of every time an employee comes into my office and says, hey, can I have a couple of minutes? And it's basically just be aware that HR is not a confessional. If you come and talk to me and you tell me somebody has violated a company policy, if they violated the law, if there's morality issues, ethics issues, safety issues, I have a duty to act on what you're telling me. And I'm honest from the time they come into my office. And what's funny about saying that is that after a little while, people would come into my office and say, yeah, I really am just venting. Nobody violated anything. Everybody's alive. I just need your opinion, or I just need a little bit of feedback on this thing. Cool, fine, have a seat. It becomes a little bit of a joke, but it's a joke that we respect each other's space. So I'm transparent of the rules of engagement with me, because at the end of the day, HR is always a department. You cannot be the friend. You are a department when you're at work. I'm very sorry to tell you that, but sometimes you are an island, and that's the way that it needs to be. The next thing I am is consistent. They always get that speech at the beginning of every conversation. And then if they're like, yep, I do have some things that I need to tell you, I give them that next level of transparency. Okay, I'm going to take notes of our conversation. I might have to ask you to write a statement. I do not promise anonymity. I do not promise confidentiality. If something is happening, if an investigation needs to go on, there's usually one or two people that need to know exactly what's happening before you can move forward. So I can't promise to that person that I can keep everything to myself. This is, of course, only necessary if you're having a conversation that's going to result in any kind of an investigation, or they told you that there's a violation of something going on. I tell them what their rights are as an employee. They have the right to not be harassed, demeaned, demoted, punished for sharing what they shared with me. They have the right to not be retaliated against. And if they feel like they are being retaliated against because they came and spoke with me, they need to come talk to me and I will handle it. I always handle it. Consistency. This next thing is going to hurt the feelings of the people that got into HR because they like people. Liking people is fantastic. It's not enough to make you a good HR person. And in fact, if you like people too much, I would say it would make you a bad HR person. In order to maintain that balance between company needs and employee rights and wellness, you have to be a neutral party. That means you cannot have friends at work. You should not be venting about any of your work frustrations or your personal frustrations with anyone that you work with. HR is a department, and I know that that hurts people's feelings, but you are a job role. I am not a Wilda when I'm at work. I am HR. If an employee calls, if a customer calls, if a vendor calls, they don't get a Wilda, the person, they get the department. And everything that I say is on behalf of the department, is on behalf of the role of human resources. No one can perceive me to have favorites because I treat everyone equally and the same. I do not rally for hiring my friends, hiring previous coworkers, and I 100% don't work in companies that have family members in them, because no matter how good you are at separating, that perception of favoritism will always be there. Next, you need to care about employee engagement. And I don't mean the traditional, like, hey, go do a survey and see how people are feeling. I mean purposefully and strategically involve your employees, engage your employees. If you're the person writing policies and procedures, get a group of employees together to talk through that with them to know how it would impact them. In some cases, you're legally bound to have that policy and procedure, and that's fine. But going back to transparency, you need to be transparent. Hey, the law changed, the regulation changed. This is what the company is shifting to. Here's why. The last thing that I recommend to all of my clients and to the HR professionals out there that I've helped develop is patience. This is something that I have to work on every single day. I'm not a patient person. If you're coming into an organization to help fix perception, to help build employee wellness, to help build relationships with employees and their managers, that is not something that gets repaired overnight. You have to undo trust issues. You have to undo frustration. You have to undo sadness. And in some cases, there are leadership changes that need to happen that, again, take time. I've gone into companies that it took a couple of months to fix perception, and I've gone into organizations that it took over a year to fix perception. It depends on a lot of factors like the size of the organization and how much damage was actually done before you started working on this. But it will happen. And I will tell you that one of the things that always works in my favor is employees talk to each other. And I know sometimes people are afraid of that and whatever, but in this case, it helps me tremendously when I help one person and another person, and I'm consistent with my conversations with both, and they talk to each other like, oh, she told me the same thing. She was honest about her investigation process and what I could expect from it. She was honest about this policy and why it was implemented. She walked me through her processes. She walked me through how to use a system, and she didn't make me feel dumb or like she was in a rush to get me out of her office. Enough people start sharing that story, they become your champions out in the field. If you do that for long enough, you'll see it turn around. There's always going to be a handful of naysayers, and that's okay. That naysayer deserves the same amount of support and consistency and clarity that everybody else gets. When you foster trust and HR becomes trustworthy, you can transform the entire work environment, and every department is positively impacted by that. For the HR professionals watching, I hope that this helps you get out of the personnel management days. For the non-HR professional, I hope that this helps you give the HR people in your life just a little bit of slack. Help them help you. And if they're struggling, send them this video. I'll see you again next week.